Hi everyone, it's Feminista Jones. I have not made a video in a long time. That's primarily because I have a wonderful podcast called This Week in Blackness After Dark, which I co-host with my extraordinary partner, Najayla Ree. You can listen to us Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've been on hiatus for about 6 weeks, but we will be returning, I believe next week we'll be returning. I just wanted to kind of update you guys on some things that are going on with me and things that I've been working on. First, I am headed to Netroots Nation Conference in Detroit this weekend. I am I'm moderating a panel on Black feminism's new wave, and I'm doing that with Imani Gandhi, Mickey Kendall, Shafika Hudson, Jamie Nesbitt. We're all like pretty awesome women, I think, and we're all coming together to basically talk about a new wave of Black feminism and how we've found our voices online and have been able to use that to really kind of spur action in many other ways. We have really pushed forward these conversations of intersectionality, and we're really going to explore that, and I think that's going to be really, really fun. I'm also co-leading a caucus called We Are All Women, and that's going to be basically, again, furthering this conversation of intersectionality and feminism and social justice work that really works for all women of all races, trans women, cis women, all of us, gay, straight, whatever. And that's going to be in the afternoon on Friday. Then Saturday, I was selected to be a keynote Ignite speaker. Listen. Y'all know it's been a long week for me. I'm going to be giving an Ignite keynote speech on Saturday, and I'm going to be talking about basically how sharing your personal story inspires others. It's a 5-minute speech, and it'll be really awesome. So I'm excited about that this weekend. Next weekend, I'll be heading out to San Jose for the Blog Her 10th annual conference. Okay, so it's Blog Her 14. I am the Love and Sex editor there. I am so excited to have been invited to be part of the closing keynote, again, on this idea of intersectionality and working with race and gender, particularly in online spaces. So I'll be there. Shout out to all the women and men that will be attending Blog Her. Blog Her is really a platform that is underutilized by women of color, in my opinion, and I have been working for the last year to try to bring more women of color, particularly Black women and also queer women, to the space to really kind of talk about their experiences, especially with love and sex. I think that we need to be represented there. So if you're interested for writing, please hit me up. You guys have my contact information, so please hit me up. Then in August, I will be presenting at the Woodhull Sexual Freedom Summit. And I'm excited about that because I'm going to be talking about another thing that I love, which is hip-hop culture. I was born and raised in hip-hop culture, and was born in 1979, raised in Queens and the Bronx, and this is my life, this is my culture, and I get to talk about sex-positive feminism and the sex positivity in a lot of the music, people like Little Kim and Queen Latifah and Salt and Pepper, things like that. So I'm excited for that. That's August 16th, and that's going to be in Richmond, Virginia. This coming Tuesday, I'll be in New York. I'll be on the Lower East Side at a storytelling event, and I'll be talking about my work on anti-street harassment work and my latest campaign called You OK Sis. And this is really what I'm making this video about. I want to talk a little bit about that. You know, I've said this a lot of times. I've experienced a great deal of street harassment, and I speak from the perspective of someone who lives in a city where there are millions of people. So there's a lot of foot traffic, there's a lot of people interacting with each other on the street and encountering each other I shouldn't even say interacting, I should say encountering each other on the street, a lot of passersby. And we rely heavily on public transportation. Millions of people take the train every single day. We take the train, we take the bus, we walk pretty much everywhere. People that have cars, you know, they usually save them for the weekends, or they're coming from out of city. So I'm also a Black woman, I'm also a tall Black woman, I'm also a shapely Black woman. So when I talk about my experiences, I understand that they come from that perspective. But what I also know is that I'm not alone. Women all over the world are dealing with this type of sexual assault or, you know, degradation while they're walking on the street. And I've been passionate about this, and I've been speaking out about it for about 4 years or so now. I remember back in 2010, I read an article about a woman in DC, a young sister that was shot because she wouldn't give a guy her number. And while I'd been dealing with this prior to that, that incident really resonated with me in a way that I was just like, whoa, what is going on here? Like, you can't not give somebody your number and then not be afraid that you're going to get shot. And that really prompted me to start talking about it. So I think I wrote my first piece, I think it was in June of 2011 or something. It was early to mid 2011 that I actually wrote the first piece for my blog about street harassment and this idea that women should be able to walk down the street without having to hear all these kinds of like licentious kind of sexual comments as they're walking by. Now, a lot of women can't relate to this, right? Because they drive a lot, or they live in areas where they don't have a lot of interaction with people, or maybe every now and then they'll hear it, but they just brush it off. It's, you know, the hey baby and all that doesn't bother them. And honestly, I've gotten to a point where I just kind of dismiss that as well. But what I realize as I get older, particularly as I've watched, you know, younger women, right, and how they're treated, it started to bother me about the effect that this could have on people. I realized that it contributed a lot to my own anxiety. When I knew that I had to go to certain places, I would have to I have to figure out what I'm going to wear for this day and make sure that whatever I wore wouldn't attract the attention, right? And when I became conscious of the fact that I was doing that, I realized that there was something really, really wrong with that. You should not have to pick what you're going to wear because you're afraid of how you're going to be treated as you walk down the street. That's not the kind of world I want to live in. That's not the kind of world I want my son to live in, or none of us should want any of our sons or daughters to live in. I acknowledge that women are not the only ones who experience this, that there are men that have experienced as well. There are trans women and trans men who experience this as well. I recognize that it's not only a heterosexual type of thing, that queer people as well commit street harassment and experience it. I myself recently at the Harlem Pride festival was street harassed by 2 older women, lesbian women, and in front of my child, and it made me really, really, really uncomfortable. And so it goes across the board. A lot of the anti-street harassment movements, particularly in the United States, have been led by white women. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because I think all women have the right to speak out for what they experience. But the issue that I had was I started feeling that the voices of black women were not as included in this, particularly black women who reside in urban spaces, or lower income black women, or basically the black women that are most likely to encounter this type of street harassment. I felt like their voices weren't being heard as much. I also felt that their experiences were not being discussed as much, because I feel that there is a difference in the way that black women experience that. So there was one day where I was out and I was witnessing this in front of me, and I've seen it so many times in the past, and you know, I've become so used to it. A lot of women have said, listen, and brothers even have said, listen, we're just so used to seeing this. It's like so normal to us. But this one day I was really, really, really just bothered. I'm walking with my son and I see a guy roll up on a young woman who's pushing a stroller and grab her arm to get her attention. And then for the next 10 minutes or so walking with her, even though she said that she needed to go, she wasn't interested in what he was saying, he would not leave her alone. And he was trying to sell his music at first, but then it went beyond that. And something in me struck as how often does this happen and we don't do or say anything? And I'm looking at this young woman's face and I'm like, she does not look comfortable at all. And that's when I asked her, are you okay, sis? And I called her sis because she was black, and I know that kind of phrasing is pretty much African-American vernacular English, and I know that kind of interaction doesn't really happen as much with others, but it was for me and it was authentic for me. And after it happened and I got into this back and forth with this young man who was offended that I was asking her if she was okay. And I understood why, but I still felt the need to address her as the victim and not him. I didn't tell him to back off. I just made myself present and I said, are you okay? And when she said that she was fine and I felt okay, she said, I got this. Then I went on about my business. And I realized that, I came to Twitter and I shared that experience. And I shared it because I've started documenting my experiences with street harassment, because for me, it's been a release. It's been a way that I can let it go and not bottle it up inside anymore. So I shared it with Twitter and I would, let people know this is what happened. And then I said, is there something that we can do? Can we just all do this? Can we maybe make this summer like a time where we all just kind of say, hey, I'm looking at the situation. It doesn't seem right. I'm going to ask this person if they're okay. If they're okay, if they're fine, they say they are, and that's fine. They retain their agency. They have the right to say, I'm okay, I'm not. But if they're not okay, at least they know that someone was there, right? Someone cared enough. And I think this goes beyond street harassment. This really is about us as citizens looking out for each other and being good, so-called good Samaritans. There's situations where people, encounter violence and stuff like that. And I think because the approach is really to go after the people that are perpetrating it, I'm not trying to put anybody in jeopardy. I'm trying to get us to look at each other and notice when things are not well, particularly women who are vulnerable to these kinds of, this kind of harassment on the streets. Now, somewhere along the line, I'm going to frame this in a really neutral way. Some people who have issue with me and have for a long time decided that they were going to attack this idea that asking people if they're okay, they were going to take this idea that we should ask each other if we're okay, and they're going to make a counter attack on it, and pretty much do so to make black women, particularly black feminists, look bad. And we've been subjected to this for well over a week. I spent some time yesterday kind of looking back into how this all came to be, this so-called, this attack on what we're trying to do. And I realized that one particular person sent out a call to a lot of his following and said, we need to join this chat. And it basically led to a lot of people spending 8, now 9 straight days and thousands of tweets. And I'm not exaggerating, you guys. It's been thousands and thousands and thousands of tweets basically countering the idea that we should look out for each other. There have been accusations that I am a CIA informant, that I hate black people, that I hate black women, that I am a pawn for white feminists. Which is funny because anybody who knows me and has ever paid attention to any of the work that I do, particularly around intersectionality, which is why I'm going to be at all these different conferences, knows that that could not be any further from the truth. However, this is the kind of propaganda that is being spread because some people are really kind of scared, right? There's a fear that black men will be targeted, in some kind of carceral, policing way. And that's not what we want. And I'm saying this. And you don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe me. You can believe the conspiracy theorists who think that I am being paid by the white feminist movement to put black men in jail. You can believe that. I will totally leave that up to you if that's what makes you feel comfortable. But if you're okay with feeling a little bit uncomfortable and stepping outside of things, and you're willing to consider that black women are having these kinds of experiences that are not making them feel good, that when they're walking out on the streets, that men of all races, all ages, are treating them in ways that make them scared to go outside. If you're willing to consider that I'm not making this up, that all of the women, hundreds literally, that have participated in this conversation may just be telling the truth, that this makes them feel bad, that being called a bitch, that being called, a slut, a whore, all these kinds of things just because they don't want to talk to a guy. If you think all of that is fake, if you think that that's something that was made up by white women as a way to put black men in jail, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you feel that way, and I'm sorry that it's really hard for you to listen to black women when they speak up and say, we've been hurt. This is a segregated country, right? People tend to live grouped together by race. That is a product of racism. This country was founded on racism and genocide and sexism. So it continues to thrive on, racism, segregation, sexism, and all those types of things. So we all live kind of together, right? So white on white crime, black on black crime, all of that nonsense talk is basically a byproduct of us being in a segregated country. So yes, the majority of the assaults that black women experience, whether it's sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape, domestic violence, murder, things like that, they're committed by other black people, mostly black men. That's hard. That's a hard thing for black men to accept. It's a hard thing for me as a black woman to accept. When I think historically of the ways in which black people have been treated at the hands of white supremacy and racism, it is disheartening for me that we still live in a time where we treat each other in certain ways, right? Black women are not perfect. Trust me. Okay? I talk to black men that are victims of domestic violence perpetrated upon them by black women, so I know that this happens. I am speaking about black women's experiences. I am not singling out black men. I am not saying that men are the only people that make us feel this way. My life and my work right now is being an advocate for those who feel their voices are silenced. And a lot of time that is women, and that is women of color, and that is black women. I have taken a lot. When I spoke out about the Anthony Cumia situation where he street harassed a black woman and went on a racist, sexist, misogynistic tirade about her. When I spoke out about that, I was subjected to a week of threats and slurs and things from white men. And when I spoke out about black women's experiences with street harassment, sexual harassment on the street, on the trains, on buses, by all types of people, including police, I have been subjected to threats and insults and slurs and libel by primarily black men. That's what happens when you care about freedom and you want to push some movements forward. None of us are perfect. I'm not a perfect person, but I care. And what I'm trying to do is bring awareness and consciousness to this idea that black women have had to hold in so much for so long. And we're done. We're tired of it. We no longer want to have to be silent anymore. Us speaking out, if it results in more black men being penalized, maybe black men should change their behavior. I know this is a really radical idea, right? That there's a fear that black men are going to be locked up because black women are reporting the assaults and the harassment and the violence that they experience. We could start by not treating black women with assault and harassment and violence. You okay, sis, the hashtag that I created, is spreading around the world, and I'm happy because in India and South Africa and Nigeria and China and Korea and Australia and France and the UK and Panama and Puerto Rico and Cuba, women have been fighting back against street harassment. In Mexico, they just launched separate buses to help deter the groping that women experience while on public transportation. The anti-street harassment campaign was not just randomly created by a white woman to target black women. These are global movements all around the world, and women are tired of being treated like pieces of meat as they walk down the street. So they're speaking up. And now we have a way of approaching it that minimizes the risk of harm to all people involved, simply by being there, by being present and saying, "Are you okay?" Or if saying you okay may make the perpetrator feel like you're targeting them, you could simply say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I lost my phone. Do you have the time?" Or, "Oh my gosh, you know what? I haven't been to this neighborhood in a while. Can you show me where the nearest, whatever, Walmart, CVS, Starbucks, whatever is?" What that does is it just puts you present. It puts you there in that moment. So the person that feels that they have, this way of objectifying this person and that nobody notices and nobody cares, which is particularly relevant to black women because nobody cares, it puts you there, and it de-escalates immediately, because now the perpetrator is like, okay, somebody else is here watching me do this. I've got to either change this up or go away or leave this person alone. And that's ultimately what we want. We want the harassment to stop. So if you, as a bystander, can simply say something like, "Excuse me, do you happen to have the time?" to a victim, you can really change things. So I'm hoping that going forward, we've dealt with a lot of trolling on the hashtag. I am just asking people to block and just silence the noise. There's a lot of propaganda being spread. There's a lot of antagonizing. There's a lot of questioning that poses doubt and things like that. People are being forced to answer questions that have already been answered. People are being subjected to slurs and harassment and assault, and I do not want that, and I'm sorry that that happened. But on June 7th, when we first mentioned it, a certain person put it out to his followers that they need to basically join in on the chat, and they decided to do that and attack us along the way. And unfortunately, it's this kinship that I have with black men. It's really, really embarrassing to watch some of the things, to read some of the things that are being said, because they're just absolutely illogical, irrational, nonsensical, and they kind of make them look really, really bad. And I hate that. I'm still very protective of black people, and we have this thing where we don't want to be seen a certain way by white people, right? Still working on that. I'm definitely somebody who's still working on that. And the last thing I want is for us to look stupid. But so be it. I mean, a lot of these people look stupid. I don't know what else to say. I'd like to see some change in that regard. I'd like to see a time where women, all women around the world, can simply walk outside in the street and not have to face, being catcalled, being harassed, being groped, being followed, being cornered, being called all kinds of names just because they say, you know what, I'm not interested. So that's that, and that's what we're doing. And I hope, I'm very grateful to everybody that's been supporting the movement, and I hope that we can continue this conversation and connect with broader conversations. A lot of you have been supportive of it. A lot of, some people have asked, is this for all women? Why are you making this about black women? And if you paid attention to this video, you understand. We need to have our own space to be able to talk about these issues, particularly if we feel underrepresented in some of the larger conversations. I want to thank News One, and I want to thank Terrell Starr for taking this story and writing a report about it and making a film that basically captures a lot of our feelings. I want to thank Erica at Upworthy for sharing the video far and wide. I want to thank everybody who's been spreading this message and really, really, really taking it into your own life. Take it offline. That's the whole point. Take it offline. Take it to the streets and ask somebody, are you okay? Thank you all for watching this, and I hope that I get to see some of you at some of the upcoming events that I have going on, some of the conferences and events and engagements and things like that. I would love to meet you all. I'm always open for conversation. I appreciate you all. Thank you.